ahead and call the meeting to order this evening at 5:03 in the evening. I'm assuming all of you are here just to have a great time, right? That's why everybody's here? Great, that's why we're here too. No, Charlie's not. All right. Yeah. Obviously, we have a very large group. There are a couple things I need to go over for safety concerns. We cannot block those doors that you're standing in, okay? So we either need to find a seat. The conference room is open. What I will tell you is the first two applications, if you're part of those, please be in the room. If you're not part of the first two and you're standing up, if you will step outside for us and wait until yours comes up, that would be the easiest way to do this.
2 is B and D, make sure they know.
Yes. Yeah, two are, yes. A, B, it would be D and E. Because that one's postponed.
Yeah, we're doing B and D, I'm saying that's the second
Yeah.
one, we don't
Oh,
want to
yeah.
leave the room.
Which one was postponed?
Lights on.
Well, the first one's postponed, and we postponed C
Right.
also. So I'm just saying, if they're looking at the first two is B and D. C's postponed,
Nobody can hear you. Turn your daggone light on.
and A is postponed till July.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the meeting minutes from the last meeting in May. If you all can take a look over those, and then we'll entertain a motion on those.
A motion to approve the minutes from May 4th.
All right, Rachel makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Sonia seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All approve by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same? There are none. Motion carries. How many of you are here to speak this evening? I was afraid of that. All right. If you are here to speak this evening, if you will please stand, that way Charlie can swear you in.
And we'll do another batch when the others come back.
We'll do round two. I will. I'll go
If
after that.
everyone can raise your right hand, please. Do you swear affirm the statement you make tonight to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Yes. I believe I heard everybody.
Yeah, it works. All right, there are a couple of things that we're going to go over this evening because we have such a large crowd. In order to keep the time limit to a minimum, I don't think any of us want to be here at 10 o'clock this evening. So we're going to go over a couple of things to keep the meeting moving as quickly as possible. We can instate these normally when there's a large crowd. What we're going to do, if you are an applicant this evening, if one of these is your application, we will give you 3 minutes to speak about your application. Everybody who wants to speak about that application will then get 2 minutes behind that. And everybody's going to say, well, you're being rude. No, we're trying to be time consuming, all right? So we're trying to keep it efficient and keep this running smooth. What we're asking you to do, if you're one of the neighbors, we want to keep down the repetition. So if somebody got up before you and said the exact same thing that you're going to say, there's probably no reason to say it twice. We ask you to keep to the facts. These tend to be very emotional, and they tend to be a little argumentative at times. We're not all enemies in this room, all right? We're all here for the same reason, to make sure that our county does what's supposed to be done. If you get argumentative at any time, I will ask you to stop, and I will ask you to sit down. That is our right to do that. So we want to be as respectful as possible. Applicant gets 3 minutes. Each neighbor gets 2 minutes. The applicant will then get 3 more minutes to answer the question behind those neighbors.
If maybe one neighbor can plan to speak but would like to donate their minutes to another member to consolidate his...
Does not carry over.
Okay.
Because what we end up with is the last neighbor takes 45 minutes. So we don't want to carry that over, all right? So each neighbor gets 2 minutes.
We're hoping the first neighbor do.
Yeah, no carryovers. All right, does everybody understand what we're doing so we can move this along efficiently? All right, let's hope this works out that way. Elise will keep our time. She will let me know. I will tell you when your time's up and you can finish your statement, all right? All right, we'll go ahead and start hearing the first application, S-2023-09. Oh, yes, we still have to unblock the doorways. If this is not your application and you're standing, if you could step out into the hallway. If you're not here for this first application, please move away from the doorways.
Well, number 9, I thought was moved to July.
Oh, yes, I do need to announce 2 changes in the agenda. The first of which is S-2023-09, a conditional use permit for operations of the paragliding business on Weisenberger Mill Road. That is postponed to the July 6th meeting. If you are here for that one, that will not be heard tonight.
Is anybody here for that application, for the Weisenberger Mill application? Bummer.
Excellent.
All right.
The second item is we've identified that the applicant or one of the applicants for S-2023-15 does not have a completed property tax code enforcement form, and therefore is not in compliance with our regs, and they cannot be heard. They have requested, they have to be postponed for this meeting, and they've requested it to the July meeting, or for it to not be on the July meeting agenda, instead being heard on the August meeting agenda, which is scheduled for August 3rd. If you're here for that one, and with some of these ones that are a lot more engaged, you have an email address, sign in, put your email in, it'll be in that room, the lunch area over there. Please orderly go into that area, put down your information. I will include you in any further emails with updates on that one.
Is anybody here for the Abbey Road?
Yes, that is the Abbey Road site, thank you.
Nobody?
It's
all?
it's the Veterans Home in the Oxford Manor subdivision that is not being heard tonight due to issues with their form. So if you're not here for that, and that's your only one, you get a nice get out of jail free card. If you want to be included on updates on things, include your information, email, on one of the sign-in sheets. If there's no space on the sign-in sheet, just like write your name and your email on the back. Or your name isn't on one of the ones that are in there. That's all I have for that.
All right, in that case, we will start with the first application that's not postponed this evening, which is S-2023-14.
I need you guys to not be blocking that computer because otherwise the receiver is not going to cooperate. Thank you. Okay. Our first application tonight is a conditional use permit for a private recreational area in order to have 2 campsites for rental located at the property address 7104 Muddy Ford Road. It's an A1 zone parcel off of Muddy Ford Road, south of the intersection of Rogers Gap and Muddy Ford Road. Both are state maintained roads. It is approximately 5 acres in size. Staff does recommend approval after review against the standing ordinances in the county. This is an aerial shot of the property. As you can see, it's directly south of that intersection like I mentioned. The property owner actually owns 2 parcels side by side, both measuring 5 acres. There's no pre-existing residence on either of the properties, although the one which is our subject property, the address site of 7104, does have some barns and outbuildings on the property. It does have the Rogers Gap Creek. I'll kind of get into that in a moment. This is just the subdivision of the property. It does note the floodplain of Rogers Gap Creek. And then this is a map including the floodplain as defined by the firm map available by the government. And then there are 2 site locations on there. So this was as a result of a zoning violation letter that was issued by our office regarding the site. Section 4.12 of the zoning ordinance lists private and public parks and recreational areas as a conditional use in the A1. We were notified that there were operations on the site and reached out to the applicant and said, hey, you need to get into compliance, you need to get a use permit before you can continue. They've reapplied and they're looking for a permit to be approved to operate no greater than 2 sites for RV tenants to rent on the property. The applicant expects that at most 4 guests would be on the property or 2 per RV, and he stated that while water and electricity are available on hookups, he's interested in providing portable toilets for tenant use. I'll get into that momentarily. There's no further improvements or changes to the site expected as part of the development other than gravelled areas and the utility hookups. There's some existing trees. They're kind of difficult to see, and also, I mean, sometimes they're just not there. It claims to have some trees that would be appropriate screening for the site activities and that type of deal. Aside from the RV sites, the property is proposed to just be used as traditional agricultural purposes, either with livestock or farming, obviously up to their discretion. Those are uses by right. As I stated before, the property owner owns 2 parcels, both 5 acres at the corner there, and there's a portion of the property within the floodplain. I did a rough aerial measurement here. It's kind of hard to read, but it's approximately half of the property is within the designated floodplain, and the campsites would be outside of those floodplain areas, which is a big concern for us. We just want to make sure that if we're putting things in, we're being mindful of our impacts on the creeks and waterways in the county and trying to keep as much activity or changes in elevation out of those areas. While these are occupied by a tenant for an unspecified amount of time, we're treating them as if they are part-time residents, similar to a kind of hunting cabin or those types of deals. Obviously, that's up for board interpretation, but at least from our side, our reading of the ordinance, we're seeing them as part-time residences, so they're not calling into question anything with our density standard. If the board feels so inclined, they may require conditions that could kind of require one on each location. That's up for their discretion. Staff does not support the use of portable toilets as the sole waste management system on the property. If approved, they would need to install a septic system in accordance with the health department regulations. We're not comfortable at all with endorsing a use that would provide a inconsistent waste management thing or encourage applicants to then take their waste elsewhere and dump it into areas that are not suited for it. It's a very sensitive area with this floodplain, and we don't want anything that would potentially harm those up or downstream, or those just directly adjoining with unsightly scent and additional deliveries to the site. I will keep that site there. I do not have a slide on it in this order, but I would like to call to mind an ordinance that was recently passed by the county fiscal court relating to agricultural use buffers. After conversation with the Soil Conservation Board, an amendment was put forward to the fiscal court, or to the Planning Commission Board. It was recommended to the fiscal court, and on the meeting on May 25th, last Thursday, it was had its second reading and was approved and adopted by the fiscal court. While there are a lot of pieces and parts to it, the portion that we're most interested in talking about is the agricultural buffering requirement. And I will read it verbatim. This is going to come up in a couple other things, so I'm going to just read it once now, and then I'll probably have to read it again, but I'm hoping for the best here, trying to keep my air. Per the amendment, section 6.14, agricultural buffering has been created in the landscape ordinances, in which it states, when land zoned anything except A1 or C1 is developed, the developer shall construct a 6-foot minimum height fence. Excuse me. We'll pick up other voices. We need to be considerate. I'll start again. When land zoned anything except A1 or C1 is developed, the developer shall construct a 6-foot height minimum fence of diamond mesh wire or equivalent no-climb wire. The fence may not be bonded, and if an existing tree line is present, then adequate measures shall be taken to remove those vegetation and to place the fence on the property line. The cost of fence installation shall be at the expense of a developer. A following sentence states, property boundary fencing, as described as above, shall be required for all parcels adjoining A1 zone land, regardless of the subject property zone, wherein there is an approved change of use, either through a conditional use, a variance, or development plan approval, and as part of that process, and then they're joined, and at that point, those who are joining non-conditional use or development plan A1 zone parcels. So in this instance, staff would recommend that they adhere to this regulation, and it's kind of covered with item 6 of the conditions of approval, which would require that installation along all property lines which adjoin those parcels that are not under conditional use review. So that's all 4 sides. They're required to install a 6-foot tall diamond mesh or no-climb wire fence. If the applicant has issues with this, that is something that cannot be taken under by the Board of Adjustment at this time. They will need to file a development plan, and in that requesting a waiver from the requirements and go forth from there. It's just something that is important. It's brand spanking new, so anything that's determined to be a change of use to the point where it doesn't really fit as well with the A1 uses, we just want to make sure that we're protecting the A1 uses as much as possible.
When does that go into effect?
Now.
Is that immediate?
It's now.
Okay.
It went into effect I don't know what time the meeting closed on the 25th, but at that
As of the
time,
25th.
it came into effect. All further development plans, and those not currently underway, are required to adhere to it. So this is applicable for this site, and this is applicable for other sites. Yes. Overall, I will continue. So I do have 4 findings as related to this one. They're on our board here. Just kind of talks about their location, the requirements on the amendments, and that the consideration that approval of the use permit is not anticipated to adversely impact public health, safety, or welfare, nor alter the character of the general vicinity. We believe it's relatively reasonable to want to have people come and rent your property or space on the property for temporary habitation. Obviously, we need to make sure that the impacts to the adjoining property owners are not going to negatively impact them, such as not having anything in the floodplain for our adopted floodplain management ordinances, or at least in accordance with our floodplain management ordinances, and then also with that landscape buffering requirement. Again, if that's something that they're interested in waiving, that's a development plan. That's not here tonight. Overall, staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit after review of the standing ordinances in Scott County. There are 7 conditions of approval. We'll run through all. We're doing all conditional use permits tonight, so we're just going to do my quick little spiel here. The first 4 are a typical 4 for the Board of Adjustment conditional use permits. They adhere to our regs. They adhere to all federal, state, and local regs. It becomes null and void upon transfer or sale, and they have to return to us prior, and the big thing, and that's why it's involved, prior to any changes in the use. If you're expanding, if you want to change it up a little bit, you need to come back, let us know, because it could be in violation, and if they're in violation, it could be pulled. And then items 5, 6, and 7 are related just to kind of keeping everything controlled. So installing a septic system for waste management, installing all agricultural buffers as per the landscape amendment that I was talking about, and then that they have no greater than 2 campsites on the property, as described by the applicant in their application information.
All right, does the board have any questions for Elise? Thank you. Is the applicant here on this one? You want to speak?
No, sir.
Okay. We don't either. I don't blame you. All right, is any of the neighbors here on this one at all? Would you like to speak? Please, by all means. State your name and address for us, please.
Thank you. My name is Rodney Courtney, live on Burgess Smith Road. And the farm that's just across what we're talking about right now belonged to my great uncle that just passed away, and my parents currently live on that farm. I speak in opposition to the plan, but definitely not Hunter Wells Road. He's a fine young man. But what I don't like about this is another RV park. We already have one down the road. We don't need another one. We just recently got the dump removed nearby our area. I wake up on a damp morning. I smell that every day. That's a concern. RV trailers coming up and down our road. It's a little bitty, pristine, beautiful area, country road setting. It's not a place for RVs to be on that road. Just a few miles, well, a mile and a half down the road or less, there's a culvert called Double Culvert on that road that you cannot get a trailer through there anyway. So I know there's other avenues entry to that, but view shed, as far as again the pristine area, it's one of the most. Every Scott County knows that. It's a beautiful place, and Turkey Foot is one of those, and we want to keep it that way. And we don't again need another RV park. Safety concerns, environmental concerns. Just like I spoke about the dump, runoff, sewage, water. That's my concerns, and I thank you for letting me speak, and I think there might be one more maybe that wants to thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I think we do have some questions for you. If we can ask those questions, if you'll come forward, please. I know you tried to avoid that, but we do have some questions for you, sorry. All right, what questions?
I think several of us have questions. I'll lead off with one. I did have some concerns. I know we're speaking of this as a campsite. In your application and in some other emails I'm looking at here, you have referred several times to will be on a monthly basis for as long as they want to stay. We cannot have residences here. What limitations are you meaning by for as long as they want to stay?
They keep it parked there. One guy, he's a truck driver and he travels, and he's there maybe 3 times a week. And the other guy, he works up at the Ark, and he's all the time not vacation, but hiking, and goes on different camps with his dogs and takes them walking. So they're there every now and again. One guy's there more frequently, but they keep it as a place to park and come back to, but they're not living there every single night.
Are the campers staying there every single night?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is their secondary residence per se? Okay.
And it's the same campers that are staying there, right?
Yes, sir.
That's all.
All right. Elise, if I heard you correctly, the new standard is a 6-foot diamond wire fence across the entire property. Are you willing to do that across this entire property?
Across the entire property, as long as the roadside, they wouldn't have to. Is that correct?
It would be the entirety of the property adjoining anything that isn't also fenced, so it would be all four sides.
Even along the road?
Even on the road. You can put a development plan forward and request a waiver, as part of that. It's a different board that reviews that. But if you were approved, you would expect that you would adhere to the letter of the ordinance as written.
Question, Elise. The table you've got at the top of the page in your staff report, it says accept street frontage. What does that mean then? Because it bothered me that it was not going to be a fence on all 4 sides, but this seems to say it's not going to be on the street frontage.
Under C.
I mean, I don't have the whole ordinance, so I don't know, it's got *6 and *12, but it says adjacent to all common boundaries except street frontage. Is that just trees or something? Does that also apply to fences?
So to my understanding of our interpretation of the ordinance is that is specifically like R zone subtypes, commercial C zone subtypes and I zone subtypes adjoining A1 area. So it kind of, it does not include this one because it's not, we don't have an add one, which is what 6.14 would be. Does that kind of make sense? Maybe I didn't explain it particularly well.
No, no.
So as I'm reviewing the ordinance here, just for everyone, there's that row about it. It's any kind of overlaying zone of the R subtypes, the C subtypes, or the I subtypes adjoining an A subtype zone. It's not an A versus an A. There's no buffer, at least in the property perimeter requirements, so that section is not applicable to this one. If it was something on like a subdivision that was a parcel on the urban fringe that was rezoned to residential use, adjoining an ag farm on the other side, that would be when this would be applicable.
So this one is not, you're saying now?
It's not under 6.12, but it's under 6.14. So it would be no trees are required, but the fence is required.
Even
No
on the
trees
road?
required.
Even on the road frontage?
In my interpretation off the bat, yes. Obviously, if things change, that would be the interpretation from our director who's not here.
So it's no tree on the frontage of the street, but it does require the fence.
It does require a fence on the front end of the street. At least that's how I'm interpreting it here and how I'm recalling the conversations about it. Because it's regardless of if there's a street, if there's a creek, if there's really, I mean, obviously those are up for discussion, but my interpretation tonight is that it's all roads and all parcels.
Is that where you interpret it?
Well, I don't have the whole thing in the packet, and I've not gotten a copy of it since it was adopted. I would not expect it to be that way, because it talks about boundary lines, and I don't usually talk about a boundary line
Right.
at the road. That's right of way. So no, I wouldn't think so, but I don't have the whole thing, so maybe it does say that more clearly someplace. But on the other hand, I can't imagine having 6-foot diamond mesh along the road. I don't, I can't imagine that being appropriate, but,
Taking away that portion, though, you still have to have diamond mesh along 3 sides.
yeah, well, 2 sides, I think, if you look up there, because you got a road on 2 sides.
And it was a also a no-climb fence could go as well, right? I mean,
Well, yeah, that diamond mesh or some other no-climb fence, yes, yeah.
6 foot tall.
would regular, like, livestock wire fencing work would be adequate, about chest high?
6 foot tall.
It would be 6
6 foot.
feet height
6 feet
and
tall.
length. We have to look and see what specific model of fence you are looking to use on that one. I can't speak to livestock specific versus no climate, there's not an overlap in interpretation on, they're one and the same, so.
But the 6 foot is
it
the
would be
minimum
6 feet,
regardless.
yes.
Can I ask you another question, how you're going to address the septic?
Yes, sir. I've talked to A1 Portable Toilet, and it was described wrong in the packet. I've talked to them, and they can come and clean out the campers once the tanks are full, and they can come clean out as needed, and that would be just an additional charge on to the campers, rather than it be a portable toilet there, because I don't want to have that either, but the campers have holding tanks on them, and once they stay there and get them full, then have them come in and pump the campers out.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to do something a little bit irregular. We're going to take a 5-minute break because I want a clarification on this standard, if we can. The one that was announced by the fiscal court. I think we need clarification on that before we move forward, because that will affect a lot of applications this evening. So before we do that, I want honest clarification on that. So if you guys can give us 5 minutes, we're going to take a 5-minute recess, so we're all on the same page, because I don't want to lead anybody astray this evening, nor do I think you want to be. All right, so give us 5 minutes and we'll recess and come back. All right?
Do we have a full copy of the ordinance? Oh, okay, good, thank you. Okay, why don't you email that to me right quick? As we walk in the other restroom, I guess.
So pretty much what this is word for word copy and pasted from the language that Matt used.
books in there. I left my book. I'm weak.
Sorry.
You can rest easy since you don't need to inflate your face.
Sort of, but I got another thing coming up in 2 months that's online.
I just already texted Joe Pat. I'm like,
That's insane.
that's what I said. You're gonna have to go and explain this to me because I have no idea.
So much for us making jellies and honey by ourselves.
Right.
Beats my whole plate. Okay. Thank you, y'all, for your patience.
Elise, you ready? All right, we're going to try this again. I'm well aware we just killed our own 3-minute rule. Sorry. This was a new this was a new interpretation to us too. The way we interpret the standard as we read it is all common boundaries needs to have a 6-foot tall diamond wire fence. This does not apply to frontage roads that have a right-of-way. Okay, so if you have a road space as a right-of-way, it doesn't require that. However, if you have a boundary against somebody else, then it will require a 6-foot diamond wire fence, okay, which is a lot. So that's the interpretation that we have got from a fiscal court ruling on May 25th, I believe. Is that correct?
Not the fiscal court ruling, but the fiscal court ordinance.
Ordinance,
adopted on
excuse me.
the-
Not the ruling, but the ordinance. It is in place, all right? So we will honor that this evening, and we will move forward, all right? All right, sorry, didn't mean to leave you standing there. We had to interpret that standard. Any other questions? I'm assuming no other questions for Mr. Rhodey? All right, I think we're done with you, I'm pretty sure.
Good deal.
You're probably glad, yeah. All right, any questions or comments for Elise or anybody else? Anybody else want to speak on this application?
I have a question.
Please, if you'll state your name and your address.
I'm Frank Wiseman. I live on 234 Fennel Road.
Okay.
The question is about your condition number 7, only 2 cabins. How long does that apply, and who enforces it if he tries to build another one?
It's a valid question.
We're not building these campsites.
Elise?
What do you have campers?
I mean, it's pretty binding there. We have done similar things, such as regulations related to staff count on a property. We remember the Frankfurt Road site and that type of deal. Our system of enforcement is based off of citizen reporting. It's difficult for us to go out to every single site every single day and make sure that every single person is complying with their rules. So it's ultimately the initial kind of calling to attention is a neighbor calling in, which is how this came to us in the first place, and then us taking action if we, after going out to the site, see evidence that they are in violation of their approved conditions. So it is, we would enforce it, but it is, the first step is having a neighbor reach out to us via email or phone call and saying, hey, it looks like they have 7 out there now, or whatever number they have now. I thought they were only approved for 2, and we'd say, yeah, and then we'd go out to the site and take it from there. So.
That answer your question, sir. Okay. Anybody else want to speak on this application? I'm sorry, I've got him first. If you will, please step forward and state your name. Yep. State your name and address for us, please.
Hello, my name is Gary Sowers, 1756 Rogers Gap Road. My brother and I own the property straight across from the bottom where it says Rogers Gap Road. We're right there on the left. Hunter has kind of made me feel better about one of the things I was very concerned about, and that was the sewer system. Be it lagoon, septic, as you can see, it's going to go to the water table.
Right.
And if it doesn't, you can see the way it flows down there. We're famous for it. It's going to come to the septic system. One of the things I really don't want to do, it's a beautiful area. I don't want to see a bunch of RVs down there. We're just not made for it. The road's not made for it. We have our own heavy equipment school buses. They get to meeting. They get to coming from other places. They hit that tunnel down on Double Culvert Road. Nobody's turning around. It's going to be a mess. So as far as the two, I'll leave that up to everybody else. That, I kind of want that in stone. I'm sorry to be that way, but he's helped me out with the sewer. I do like that. Don't want an RV park. I don't want the four-wheelers. I don't want the trespassing. I don't want the poaching. I don't want the doing donuts in my bottom down there. Been through all of that.
Right.
Otherwise, I'm cool with it. And as far as a fence and boundary, if you're going to make him put one right up against that creek, I think that's aesthetically pretty ugly. And since really, except for the road, he's bordering me there. And that's one of the things we've done to that community. We've made it nice. PVA was down there, it's been a few years, and he gave us a compliment that really surprised me. I'm prejudiced in that sense, but he said that's the most beautiful valley in Scott County.
All right, we appreciate it, but I am going to call you at a time. We're trying to give everybody 2 minutes. Thank you.
You got my gist.
Appreciate it. I got it. Yep, we got it. Thank you.
Excuse me, were you sworn in a little while ago?
I'm dead.
Were you sworn in a little while ago? Did you?
Sworn? No, but I didn't.
Well, you tell the truth?
I probably just did.
All right. That's good, thank you, sir.
Oh, we're going off the rails quickly. All right. Anybody else want to speak on this application? All right. In looking at a couple things, I think you have the best of intentions. I really do. Okay? But given the evidence that we have, I believe this is being treated more as a permanent residence rather than a temporary residence. And because of that, I'm going to make a motion. You did. I'm going to make a motion to deny this application. That will need a second. Rachel seconds that motion. Are there any questions or comments? If there are none, all in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, we will move on to our next application. S-2023-15, remember, has been postponed. We are now on S-2023-16. Yes, if you were here for that last application, you're more than welcome to stay around for the punishment. If not, you're more than welcome to leave, too. It's up to you. We was hoping that would be, enough of you, but it wasn't. All right.
Everybody leaves? Yes.
Yeah.
That's the right answer. Who just gets in and gets out? I wish. Unfortunately, we're so good. So, sorry, guys. That's much better. All right. This is a conditional use permit for the renting of 4 or more sleeping rooms as a veterans home in partnership with Veterans Affairs, located at the property address 3116 Long Lick Pike. It's north of the Marston Hills subdivision located off of Sable Drive. While it has a Long Lick Pike address, it has a driveway onto Sable Drive. I'm not entirely sure how that got situated. It's just the way it is. It's south of the intersection of Seabury and Long Lick, obviously north of that subdivision. Zoned A1 agricultural use, it's about 5.124 acre parcel. Staff does recommend approval. This is an aerial of the property zoomed in. This is an aerial of the property zoomed out. I put a little north arrow on it because I tend to have chronic issues with not knowing where's up, so, I gotta help myself a little bit in these ones. Anyway, besides this parcel, a lot of the others are in the Marston Hills subdivision. It was subdivided from a larger parcel in, I forget what year, and then Marston Hills was formed. I don't know why that squares in the right spot, but Marston Hills was formed in, I believe, 2004. Anyway, section 4.37 of the zoning ordinance lists 4 or more sleeping rooms in a structure as a conditional use in all residential type districts. In the section 2.33 of the zoning ordinance, it also lists government buildings and uses as a conditional use in all zoning districts. So that's how they're able to come before us with this operation. I don't want to look at how I messed up my square. I'm going to put it over here. The applicant is interested in running a program for older veterans with an average age of about 70 and is requesting approval to house up to 8 individuals at the project site. It's not under current ownership of the applicant, but sale is contingent upon approval of this conditional use permit. The applicant's business is focused on managing healthcare and housing for service-connected veterans who are screened prior to residing on the property. They do not drive, and they receive medical care and kind of health management in a home-based primary care model. They're expected to employ an individual as a house manager on site. The applicant makes no comments on the exterior changes to the property and has stated that the interior of the residence will need to be retrofitted in order to increase accessibility for those living there. At the time of application, staff is not aware that the applicant has reached out to the health department regarding the condition of the septic system. And staff has included a condition of approval that they receive endorsement that the system is appropriately sized for this level of use. These additional rooms, rules, and in this type of deal, we have it in order to make sure that homes that are being constructed of larger size are able to be supported by their system as opposed to just allowing anyone to build a 15-bedroom home. You just have to, the use permit, make sure that we keep a check on things and make sure that the conditions and the health code violations or potential for health code violations is mitigated. At the time of application, no information has been provided that I don't know where I was going with that one. The applicant has been made aware that there may be additional requirements of the building inspection office and the fire marshal, and that should this be approved, they need to be in good standing within a specific time frame of 60 days with the building inspection office that would allow, pretty much endorse the site to be used as described. Specifically, I'm referencing a certificate of occupancy saying that we're good to move forward with this level of site activity. Multiple neighbors have reached out about comments and concerns as we have a very full house tonight. Not as warm as I was expecting here, so this is kind of nice. The AC unit's doing great. Anyway, they're concerned that since there's no outlet, it's not suited for additional traffic, and just the level of site activity, individuals that may be coming to the site, they're just overall concerned on how this is going to impact their quality of life and their feelings of safety and security in the neighborhood. I'm sure we'll have testimony on that shortly, but that is a lot of, in very brief, one-sentence summary where they're kind of standing on that one. We are aware that there may be deed restrictions and that this property may be part of Marston Hills. If this was approved, they'd be expected to adhere to any home deed or HOA restrictions that we are not, those aren't our regulations, so I'm not super on it on each individual home site deal. The site in question is within a rural residential neighborhood without public open space, sidewalks, and other daily amenities. The large lots allow for outdoor recreation and activities on individual lots, and it just calls into question, does this fit in with this area? There's an increase in activity on the site expected in managing the healthcare needs of residents, including buses coming in and out to hospitals, emergency medical services, and other public service providers being called to the site to address individual situations, and that type of deal, which may not be well suited for a road with no outlet or just the area in general. We would generally prefer these types of uses to be a little bit closer to an urban center or services so that it's more expected that the level of activity is kind of suited for the area. Staff believes that noise and light would increase, but not to a significant level to where it may be wholly unsuited for the property. It would not significantly adverse the public impact or public health, safety, or welfare, and it may alter the general vicinity just with the change in the fabric from a large lot, mostly residential use, to now a kind of home care facility type deal. Yeah, so I will go forward. Overall, staff has 3 findings associated. First, which talks about where it's from the ordinance. The second is about where it's located, and the third is just staff believes that it's not reasonably anticipated not to adversely impact public health, safety, or welfare, nor alter character of the general vicinity to a significant volume. Again, we can hear testimony that disagrees, and that's cool with me. Overall, staff does recommend approval after review against the standing ordinances in Scott County. The first 4 conditions are traditional conditions for conditional use permits. The 5th is that they meet all requirements of building inspection office and receive an updated updated certificate of occupancy for the change in use within 60 days of approval. Applicant would be limited to no greater than 1 resident per sleeping room. So if building inspection says, sorry, 6 only, they would be limited to the number that building inspection set forth. They would not be permitted, at least in this condition, to exceed what the building inspection clears. And then the 7th is just that they're in good standing and they meet all requirements of the health department. Those aren't my regs, those are their regs. I'm going to defer it to them. It's just saying they need to be in good standing. Overall, though, staff does recommend approval after comparison to the standing ordinances.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Do they need a fence?
Would be my understanding under the interpretations that yes, except for on the frontage road. This would need a 6-foot diamond wire.
Which is the
fence.
frontage road? Would it be the side and the front? Or
It would be a double frontage lot because it has frontage on Long Lick and Sable.
would they have to fence the other 2 sides with a 6-foot tall diamond fence?
I would say most likely
If it's a common boundary.
it would be a common boundary. That's up for discussion. The language is a little bit awkward in case we didn't realize with our little break.
So as of now, we will say
As of
that-
now, I would interpret that yes, they would be required. It may be subject to interpretation to where it may not be required. Again, I cannot say.
Would we have to put that down as an 8th condition? Or is
It
that
would be
just the same
subject
with
to
the
all
ordinance?
rules of the zoning ordinance, and it is within the landscape ordinance, which is within the zoning ordinance. So it is covered in that one. That's why I thought about it as another condition, but I thought
Okay.
I didn't want that. Anyway,
2-sided fence.
Yeah, be a 2-sided fence. Any other questions for Elise? All right, is the applicant here? Yes, I am. Sorry, I got a lot of people.
Hi, I'm Krista. Thank you for hearing this application. I'm open to ask any questions. And the property is fenced in.
No, but 6-foot tall, no
Mesh.
climb fence.
I'm not certain on that.
It would have to be. is what
Okay.
we're saying.
And I want you guys to know, I mean, this is new for us, so I'm learning as I go. I have been in healthcare hospital for over 20 years, and I do have an MBA, and it's specialized in healthcare management. These guys are pretty much in the house unless I'm driving them somewhere. So the traffic is not aggressive, and when somebody comes from the VA to see the guys in-house, and that's just a service that's offered to them, and it, just for better, it's just a increased quality of life, being able to have, they don't have family, and so I help, kind of just improve the quality of life, and it's more like just a home that they can enjoy the scenery, they can look outside, they sit on the front porch, that's it. There's really not, unless we go out on an outing, or if a nurse practitioner or a doctor comes out, they come to the house and they see multiple people at one time. So I've been out there several times, and I've looked at the same things you guys are looking at, the access, the road, is it safe, those kind of things. But my guys just don't leave unless we're going out on an outing, which is typically maybe once a week.
Do you live there?
I'm sorry?
Do you live there?
I do not, ma'am. I'm there 7 days a week, though.
How many of these houses do you manage?
Right now, just one.
Okay, this one or
No.
one in addition to that? Okay.
Another one.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we can do this first before, and I am open to, I'm all regulations, everything. I have to abide by that by the VA as well. They want to see a conditional permit as well to do something like this. So anything, sewage, I've already looked at that. I looked at that at other locations. I do know about this one. It has been emptied. I said, we checked on it about once a year. They've emptied it. I know how many lines we need to add in per person. I will run it like take a lot of pride and integrity in what I do. So I don't want to create there's no extra activity. These are really good guys. These are really good men. We're not out trying to disturb anybody. We're stay more secluded to the house. And anything that needs to be added, sprinkler system, I'm going to add. I want the safety of everybody involved, and I just wanted a better quality of life.
how often does the VA visit that place? And do they have requirements that you have to adhere to?
So this is a high recommendation, having a permit, and I had already started that process. I did not know at the other location that that wasn't already done. So, you know, I'm trying to move forward before I have any. I've found that around 7 people is a good number in these farmhouse. The horses are very therapeutic to some of the guys, and just seeing them out the window. But as of right now, I mean, it's just one, but I plan on having more. And the VA comes about, you know, like about once a week, and they usually see, the nurse is in there seeing all the guys. Physical therapy might come out once a week. This location has a pool and a hot tub, so I thought that that might be something nice, because the guys pretty much are bound to the home.
All right, thank you. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anyone else, any neighbors here to speak on this application? I saw your hand first. We'll go to that first.
My name is Timothy Falk. My wife is Denise. We own the property at 3118 Long Lick, right next to this property here. I've known the neighbors that own the property when we first moved there in 2009, and it's always been an immaculate neighborhood, and people are very respectful, and we take great pride in taking care of our property at a high level. My concern here is that this applicant has made an applicant for a conditional use permit on Abbey Road, and in your own analysis, there's been a statement here at the bottom. It says about multiple neighbors have submitted comments, concerns about the site operations. Neighbors state that there are people living in the rear building, that veterans have been living in the home despite not having approved permit. They state that they have been issues with trespassing by veterans and tenants alike, and are concerned that the veterans in the home are living in unsafe conditions. The concern here is that this is a residential area, and we feel it, and there are several neighbors here, that this is not a place for this sort of an operation. We're not against veterans. We certainly support veterans, but it's an inappropriate place to put those veterans, and we're concerned of how they're going to be able to manage it. They've already having experienced problems with here at Abbey Road. What's going to happen with our situation, with possibly the value of our property, the safety of the neighborhood, could be a real concern here too. And so I would like for all the people that are here and on Long Lick and also on Sable Drive raise their hand. Okay, you can see it. Okay. Also, drop your hands again. Raise your hand if you're in favor of this. Raise your hand if you're opposed to this. I think this speaks for itself. So again, we're all about helping these veterans, but we really think there should be another place for this to happen. There could be an issue with parking there. There's limited parking. There's a fence around there. It's a board fence. And where are they going to park these vehicles? How are they going to manage it? You know, they can't. Sable's a narrow road right there. There's no place that goes up a hill. Could be a safety hazard with parking and everything else right there. So, but I appreciate the opportunity to come.
I'm going to cut you at that. Your 2 minutes have come and gone.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody attending. Thank you.
All right. Remember, we're going to try to keep the repetition down. So, does anybody else have anything in addition to that to say to that? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to offer just a point of clarification regarding the Abbey Road site. We are aware there are multiple issues with that site and feel like it is inappropriate to judge the activity of this site based upon a site that has egregious issues that we are working on addressing right now. So anything with the individuals being out and about and having people in that back building, that's not this site. Just for point of clarification, this site has one home on it and then the outdoor yard space. There's no other thing. It's not owned by the individual who owns the Abbey Road site. It's completely different things, and it is, I don't want to get the wires crossed just because that site has other egregious violations of our regulations that this one should be judged at the same point.
Understand.
So I just want
We'll get to you in just a second. I'll come back to that. I've already called on you. If you'll state your name and address, please.
Tracy Novacek, 113 Sable Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, your name again?
Sorry, Tracy Novacek.
Thank you.
Great,
please.
ready? Okay. I would just like to say that the residents of Sable Drive oppose this permit in order to keep our street in a single-family residence in keeping with the zoning, the deed restrictions, and the character of the neighborhood when we built our homes on Sable Drive. We understand that every real estate transaction has an element of risk. However, converting one family residence in a street with only 12 properties to a for-profit business that provides group home living is not compatible with the use of our neighborhood. The business license for the applicant is only a few months old, and there's no track record of success or responsibility. The existing residential neighborhood is not a reasonable location for this type of proving ground. It's not simply to change the residents within the property, it is to dramatically change the property use. Allowing the permit to proceed will adversely impact the residents by transferring the burden of enforcement to the residents of the street. And we also feel that safety and accessibility is a clear concern here. There are no sidewalks. Retail, grocery, and medical services are large driving distances away. Emergency services are delayed. Cellular and internet options are limited. They're slow. They're spotty. We have basic power outages once in a while. And also, we're located on a portion of Long Lick that's classified as the lowest priority for snow and ice removal by the state. It can take upwards of a day to clear our road in a large snow and ice event. If there is not an ideal condition, that risk will transfer to the residents of Sable Drive and the surrounding area. Finally, we have some concerns with the conditions of approval. Street parking. There are a lot of services listed for these residents in the narrative. And street parking is not characteristic of our street. We would like to see a prohibition. We would also like to see some requirements be met so the enforcement doesn't transfer clearly to us before you would even consider this. We don't feel like a rush to approving this would benefit the residents of our street.
Thank you. All right, sir, you had a question. If you'll step up to the mic, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a statement, and then I have a question.
If you'll state your name and address for us,
Yes,
please.
Matthew Tackett, 1019 Seabury Road. My house is up on the corner. We share a corner post there, touching the property. I guess, does my question count for my time?
Yep.
Okay.
Ask
All right.
it quick. Ask it quick.
Yeah, so I guess I was confused by your statement about the Abbey Road issue being separate from this. I don't see them separate at all because it goes to the track record of the professionalism and the ability to safely execute this plan at our property if they made such a terrible start at Abbey Road. I would just like to see her response to that, and then I'd like to make my statement about the property.
Yeah, he can come back.
A minute and 20
We won't count that one. All right.
Thank you.
So the conditions with that site is a headache.
Can I answer that one, please? There are other individuals who aren't here this evening, and that's why you're hearing us reference that we cannot address that issue tonight. We understand that all those are tied together. We do understand that, and we get that.
We're aware of them.
But we're staying away from that out of respect for the other individuals that are involved.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, it's
Fair?
Yeah,
Well, it's complicated.
It's a very complex ordeal. A lot of it is miscommunication on behalf of the owner and the applicant for this site. Misunderstandings on what you can and can't do with, they have other things. There's a whole.
There has to be fairness involved, and I'm not sure there has been.
You have to be up here so we can actually get it.
I am going to let her address this. Go ahead, come up, it's fine. I think this topic's important, so I'm going to let her address this.
And it is. I pride myself in what I do and why I even started this in the whole. There are things when I went into a partnership that I was not aware of, nor is it any part of the veteran business. And I made that real clear in my application that this back house, none of that is part of this veteran business. And, I'm 100% owner of anything moving forward. And so I would oversight.
So this property would not be bought under the same LLC?
No, and it will be, it's already got another LLC, and it's just me, and I'm telling you, I have the highest standards. Our people are really inside. They may sit on the front porch, that's it. I do screen. I have turned more down than I've accepted. My guys are really good guys. They're not, I won't take anybody that would jeopardize any kind of risk. The neighbor, that would even be an elopement where there are things that, I know that are levels of care. And if it's something like that that might come out, we did a trial stay at the Abbey for one person, and I immediately said no. So there were some other, but anything moving forward is under a different LLC, and that is me. And I promise you, I will hold it to the highest standards.
All right, thank you.
Okay, I'd like, my comment is as a homeowner and landowner in that area, I have some questions. One, it's a for-profit enterprise. I'm assuming it's not organized under a 501c3, so it's a for-profit enterprise, so that's the motivation here. And they're talking about it being a veterans program, but to my understanding, there's no stipulation that it has to be. And then I'm guessing, I don't know this, but one of my questions is if this is a HUD-VASH voucher program for veterans assistance. If so, there is limited screening that can be done. They can screen for sex offenders, they can screen for, I think, income level, but they are very specific about not being able to screen for instance, they have a limited number of screening options they can do under that federal program if that's one of the ways, if the VA is funding. So I'm wondering if Section 8 housing applicants could possibly be admitted. One of my concerns is, amongst the homeless, the National Institute of Health and the National Library of Medicine published a 2021 study that says that the prevalence of mental health disorders are approximately 76.2% with a 95% confidence interval amongst the homeless. That's a big deal. This is not a small undertaking in a residential community. If you're dealing with, the U.S. Department of Housing Urban Development said that 25% of homeless were seriously mentally ill. These are, now, it takes a qualified person to quote unquote screen applicants and take care of these kind of issues. And like somebody else said, we're obviously concerned about not only the quality of the care, but the impact on the community. Finally, if major modifications are required to be made to the home, which I can't imagine that they would not be, it follows then that should this project fail, I mean, this home would probably no longer be suitable for single-family housing again without major modifications in the other way. So what happens to that property then if it gets dumped back on us, and becomes some kind of blight in that sense? So there's a lot going on with this. This is not, anytime you're dealing with, I'm a veteran myself. I was a close air support pilot in Iraq and Afghanistan, so I'm sensitive to these issues, but that's one of the reasons why we should be very careful. I mean, this is, as you can imagine, a very, very complicated undertaking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else who wants to speak on it? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
My name is Jerry McAllister. I live at 108 Sable Drive. I want to be on record that I am with all of my neighbors on this. One thing that I just learned tonight, if they're going to have to put a 6-foot fence around this property, it will change the integrity of our entire subdivision. What's nice about our subdivision, and it really wasn't planned, but it looks like it's almost a horse farm. There's nothing but black 4-plank fencing on the entranceway, on this property, on Tim's property, on Kevin Stith's property, and a fence around that property will change the integrity of the entire subdivision. Also, just for the record, I was the first resident to build out there. Why does that property have an entrance onto Sable Drive? His address is Long Lick, and my understanding is that you have to have an entrance off of your address. So that property should have had an address or a driveway off of Long Lick. The reason it doesn't is because Mr. Marston did not want him to do it. Oh, but for $1,500, yeah, I'll let you put a driveway in there. And that's how that driveway got put there. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak about it? Yes, ma'am?
Wasn't sworn in.
No, that's Charlie. Charlie, that's your department.
Do you swear affirm the statement you're about to make is the truth, the best of your information you believe? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pelly Francis. I live at 124 Sable Drive. I did not intend to speak because this is, obviously I am not comfortable with this. I'm so sorry. So my I say this to say my grandfather was a World War II veteran. My father served in Vietnam. My husband, who is not here tonight, is also a retired veteran. He retired as a staff sergeant. He was a drill sergeant in 19 Delta. Both of my brothers served. One of them served a tour in Afghanistan. My other brother served 2 tours as a combat medic in Iraq. My sister retired as a warrant officer. That's not even my husband's background. His family service is far lengthier than mine. However, I say this to say that I have a couple of questions when we talk about veterans coming in. I think it's a very noble cause. However, we are 15 minutes from any fire service, police. If there are medical health issues, those are required to be addressed by the VA that is in Lexington, and that is a VA rule, I believe. And I understand what you're trying to do, but you keep saying these 7 guys, they just sit on the porch, they don't do anything, they'll only go on 1 outing a week. I know that this is a hard thing for people to kind of grasp, but sometimes, unfortunately, elderly people do pass on. So what will be the screening process for the next people? The VA makes no stipulations that it has to be 77-year-old people. We could have 25-year-old veterans. We could have 35-year-old veterans. We could have 85-year-old veterans. But also, going back to the street, if you look at Long Lick, you can see that there are a lot of wooded areas. A lot of people enjoy shooting and hunting in that area. What are we going to do if some of these veterans, unfortunately, like my brothers, have PTSD when it comes to loud noises? On our street for the past 2 years, we've all pulled money together and had like a little impromptu fireworks at the end of our street where the cul-de-sac is. We really don't want to have to give those things up. And again, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My time's up.
I'm trying to let you finish, but the time is up, and I want to be fair to everybody, so I'm
Yes.
trying to keep everybody
Of
to
course.
2 minutes. Thank you, we appreciate it. Yes, ma'am. State your name and address.
Cynthia Brown, 1011 Seabree. I'm probably the newest member of Scott County in this room. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary being in my new home, and I chose Scott County for my retirement home for a reason. Because this group of individuals up here, you hold a high standard, and I looked into all of this before I made the choice to move here. So thank you for that, first of all. I want to hope that we maintain that, and I have concerns about this development coming in and losing property value for one, my safety, and I've been in healthcare for 35 years. I work with homeless veterans too every day. I personally had my life threatened in February by a homeless veteran that snapped right in front of me. So that's a concern. I know it happens. I've seen it myself. I know that healthcare issues are a problem for them often, and I'm concerned about, if you're in the home 7 days a week, how long are you in that home? And I'm also concerned about, it sounds like these guys are caged animals. They're going to be in the house. They're going to be in the house. That's a concern. Men aren't made to just be in a home. They need to be out and about and do other things. So I think that's a concern. I don't think that you can just keep men in the home. I would hope that this group really considers this and thinks about it long and hard, because I'm going to tell you the same thing I told my children as they were growing up. If it's predictable, it's preventable. And I think we need to think long and hard about this, because we got a lot of schools in the area, a brand new one going up right down the end of the road. And I think it's something that needs to be given a whole lot of thought. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. All right. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Nope. All right. All right, anybody else? I want to give the applicant at least 3 minutes to readdress everybody, if you will.
What we don't understand, we fear. Society, period. What we don't know, we fear. And so I did invite the board out to come out into the home to see. First of all, this is not a HUD program. It never will be. My 20 years experience is hospitals across the entire country. So I am very, very well niched. There is no, I go in and I personally screen, and it's usually a referral of somebody that's in the hospital. These are, and it will be, and it is my niche, that it's service-connected veterans. They have a good income, and they do well amongst themselves. I come from a background of, I've done hospital, independent living, assisted living, and when you mix some of these veterans in with independent living, assisted living, they're just different. Most of them have been bachelors their whole life. They just don't have family to take care of them. And as far as the driving, nobody's driving. I have a full-time caregiver and then myself, and she pretty much works 9. There's a garage, which her car will be in, and then my car, and then any visitors that come in, which is once a week, which would be a nurse in there seeing all the guys at the same time. My guys are not very mobile. So yes, I have one gentleman that sits on the porch, and most of them watch TV. I get them out to do activities to help with mobility, because yes, I agree, but most of my guys, these are disabled veterans that are, most everybody I have is 74. So they're disabled, and they're just limited with their mobility. And so TV, yes, my biggest concern is that Spectrum's not out there. Because when the TV goes down, we've got to entertain. So there's dish and there's internet. But we cook the meals. We provide meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We provide companionship. And then we just help. You know, we did connect one gentleman with a brother. So it was just a need that we found it. But these guys are really, they'll probably be there, you know, until they're into their days or going on to a nursing home. But these guys are well connected with the VA. They are not homeless. They don't come to me homeless. These are not people off the street that I'm bringing in. These are service Vietnam vets. That's all I've got.
Is there any questions for the applicant from the board? Thank you. I think we have one more. State your name and address, please.
Sherry Mounts, 1015 Seabury Road. My concern when she says they're disabled, if this house, there's a pool in the back. This is an above-ground pool that they would have to climb a ladder to get in. Hot tub is the same thing. There's stairs everywhere. And who will maintain this property? It is over 5 acres with wood fence. Who will weed eat? Who will do the mowing, maintenance of the house? All those just simple concerns that we do worry about our neighborhood.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just for my own good, not that we can make any decisions based on it, but is there a homeowners association in that neighborhood? There is not.
There are deed restrictions in the neighborhood that would go with the parts of the buildings.
Okay.
For us to go.
Okay.
Is that, do y'all need to see that, or is that something we need to talk about? That even though it's not connected with us, it is accessed off of our road. And it says right in the first line, is that it's supposed to be a single dwelling home, and that's it. It is not allowed to change amongst anything. It does say that for us.
Charlie, would that have any bearing on this?
We were told ours was
That's
over.
a difficult question. Technically, no. Those are private contracts. That's for the residents to enforce, or way back when, for the developer to enforce. In the extreme, no, we don't consider that. On the other hand, where neighborhoods have widely opposed something, knowing if we approve it, because it does meet in general our rules, knowing that we're just simply causing litigation and whatnot among others, we have denied, probably no more than a couple through the years, but we have denied some. Because there are things that our ordinance, such as home occupation, our ordinance would permit that. But if you've got 8 homes and 7 of them say absolutely not, we're going to sue you, well, you know, we may take that somewhat into consideration. But technically, no. And if we ignored that and somebody filed suit, we couldn't hold us responsible because it's a private contract. That is not something we can enforce.
I have that if you would like to see it.
I'd rather not.
Got
Just being honest, I'd rather not. These are always very difficult, especially when you're dealing with a sensitive topic such as veterans and so forth. I'm imagining a number of us in this room, including some of us sitting up here, are veterans. We understand the issues, we understand the abilities and what's going on. However, it's our job as the board to make sure that whatever happens in Scott County is in the right scheme of the neighborhood it's going to be in. It doesn't change the dynamic so drastically that if something was to happen, it can't go back to the way it was. And that's what I'm struggling with. I believe that this is a noble effort. I do. I think this is needed somewhere. But I believe this is such a drastic change to this neighborhood that it just doesn't fit in the location it's in. My fear is that if something happens, the house would never go back to the same way it was to begin with. So I'm going to make the motion that we deny this application. That will need a second. Janet Holland seconds the motion. Are there any questions or comments?
If you could, I know you fleshed it out before you made the motion, but could you flesh it out in the motion?
I make the motion that this changes the character of the neighborhood too drastically in order to meet the approval. Therefore, I'm recommending denial. That was seconded by Janet Holland. Any questions or comments?
No.
All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. Motion carries. Thank you all.
That little guy, 3118, that two-sided fence would be right in the middle of his property.
No problem. You're good. Nope. You ought to be up here.
If there wasn't enough, the 6-foot fence, the 6-foot fence, the whole front of his property.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's a showpiece. It's the showpiece of your neighborhood, that house, because it's right there.
Right. No problem. Okay. Huh? Oh, yeah. Well, at least everybody got a seat now, so we've got to that point. There are a number of you that probably were outside and were not able to be sworn in. So if you were not able to be sworn in and you want to speak this evening, if you will stand, please. I thought we had a couple. Charlie?
Do you all swear or affirm the statement you're about to make to be the truth to the best of your information and belief? Thank you.
All right, next application is S-2023-17.
Okay. Charlie, I have to recuse myself on this because the applicant is a neighbor and a friend of mine, and I don't want to give the look that I might be preferential with him.
So we're going to put it on record that Ms. Holland is recusing herself because she has a friendship with the applicant. How's that? All right. We're dropping down like flies up here, too, so don't feel bad. We're down to 3.
Hey, Janet, can you close that door?
Can't lose any more, well, go home.
Yeah, if we lose any more, you guys are out of luck.
Gotta have 3.
All right, got me a little bit of like talking breaks, so this is nice. I'm all watered down and like, I'll give myself a second wind. In theory, it'll plummet pretty quickly, so I'm gonna try to be efficient here. This is S-2023-17, a conditional use permit for a private recreational area for the installation of up to 5 cabins located at 518 Bailey. We've seen this previously. It's the 518 parcel as well as the surrounding parcel. It's a lot of numbers. I'm not going to try. There's direct access off of Bailey Road. It's west of Barkley, east of Thinnell. It's 344 and some acres across 2 parcels. And yeah, staff does recommend approval after review of the ordinances. Obviously, it's up to you guys. Anyway, so this is the site here. If everyone wants to put themselves back to this time last month, we had this under review and it was denied in the end. At that time, they had proposed for up to 30 cabins with hiking trails, and staff recommended denial, and it was unanimously denied at that meeting. Since then, it was an interpretation by others on staff, and where amongst their discussion with others on staff that they could consider reapplying if there was enough change in the nature of the application. It was determined by consensus that it would be eligible for re-review, which is why we're standing here. And looking at the parcel again, and Bailey Road, and I'm seeing all our familiar friends and faces, and it's all an exciting time for everybody involved. Anywho, section 4.12B of the zoning ordinance lists private recreational areas as a conditional use in the A1. They're interested in operating a private area with up to 5 cabins. They've not specified if it'll have private kitchens and cooking areas or bathrooms. And it is concluded that reducing the total number of cabins allows for the impacts of development to be further understood prior to allowing for any further development. And they do not discuss any other developmental improvements to the property outside of the cabins at this time. They've removed the hiking trails, and as such, we've kind of amended some of our conditions. While there's still some impacts of things, we do conclude that the risks are, I mean, from 30 to 5 is a significant reduction for any kind of statistical thing. But that is up for conversation, and I'm sure that'll be the center of conversation is 5 still 5? Like, is 5 is more than 0. So it's just kind of, it's math, okay? I went to elementary school, I passed. So we're gonna flex that muscle. Anyway, it's a heavily wooded parcel with approximately over 344 acres. It's got what believed to be adequate buffer between cabins and adjoining property owners. We've kind of staff has taken the angle that having 5 cabins is similar to having 5 houses on the property. While the activities would not be undertaken by a full-time residence, it's expected that a lot of the uses on this site would be consistent with the uses that other neighbors have. We've heard no statement as to if that would differ or if there would be any other internal regulations on uses, but at this time, we would anticipate to be pretty consistent. So given the decreased number of units and therefore guests, we've anticipated that there would be a lessened risk. Again, the debate is whether or not the risk is still risk. And that it would be noticed by adjoining property owners. There's 3 kind of items in the staff report that I talk about in particular. Obviously, there may be additional items that the board may want to consider applying conditions for in order to better help it fit the area. If they feel so inclined, it's up to them. Anyway, loud noises and outdoor music is generally a nuisance. I don't know very many people that would disagree with the nuisance. Staff would recommend a condition that would restrict activities from producing off-site noise from occurring after 10 p.m. or prior to 8 a.m. and in doing so allowing for people to enjoy the peace of nature and not disrupt schedules. Given the heavily wooded areas surrounding the property, sparks can travel and cause a lot of problems. Overall, staff recommends that a condition would be applied that would prohibit fireworks use on the property. And then just going in that same vein as campfires, talking about having a shared pit area as opposed to 5 individual fires. Again, 5 is less than 30, but still, again, that mental math, I got it, I passed. 5 is less than 30, and staff would believe, and 1 is less than 5. So staff believes that a centralized pit can greatly reduce the impacts of fire on the property. This is just a zoomed in thing. This is just the green print of the property. This does not highlight the road. You can kind of see it wiggling along that north area there. It's pretty steep topography. Staff's pretty concerned just about the ability to kind of access the site given the wiggliness of the road, we'll call it. In the terrain change, it's a winding road and it's a narrow road. And so there's concerns that even with that, it's still a 14 to 16 foot wide road, being relatively generous, including pretty much all of the paved shoulders, including rumble strips. It's a whole mathematical thing. we can obviously bring that up for debate on the width on things, and I'm sure people will testify one way or another on the width, but at least when the area that I measured it at, it's between 14 and 16 feet wide. Additionally, there's no streetlights. There's not a lot of areas and opportunities for signage, and it's also up in the hills. You're using other small, narrow roads to get up to it, and you can kind of see it on this map here. There's some floodplain along Morris. There's also identified some areas that flood along Finnell, which I have on the next slide. So all the red dots up on here are areas that we've identified as potential for road closures given a severe or even minor rain event. Some of these areas are pretty low-lying or have low water crossings or are super close to the river or a creek because it's flat and it's easier to build a road there. And so in doing so, it just puts the road at a greater potential for flood risk. Additionally, there's no road measurement from the state side of things, but it is a narrow road. And all these kind of shaded areas are areas identified as 5-mile radiuses from radii, that's the right word. Radii from Scott County maintained fire stations. This is outside of those service areas, so it's expected to have a greater challenge to get to these locations in a timely manner. And then given the width of the road, there's concerns that the engines and other equipment may not be able to get there or be able to navigate it or navigate to the site, to the actual fire, and that poses a notable risk for everybody. There's existing public water on the site. It's after review, it appears that it's not a super well-sized or well-pressured line, and so it would kind of put pressure on an existing infrastructure that's already kind of weak. And yeah, overall, at the last meeting and at this meeting, I'm sure multiple neighbors have voiced concerns about the operation. They've talked about that at most, it's at its absolute widest, it's 14 feet wide. It can take emergency services 20 minutes to get to the site, and just overall, they've argued that it was not well suited, and then previously a board decision was that it wasn't well suited and it was denied. Overall, it would, yeah. So I will kind of continue there. We talked about this before. This is where my slide went. I'm a little bit sour, it's gone. But it would be expected to adhere to Scott County Ordinance 23-05, which talks about the ag buffering. We've talked about it before. We had our 5-minute little kumbaya moment amongst board, determined that except for road frontages, we would expect boundary fencing all the way around. They would need a development plan as part of this process, and they do that whole thing.
Can I stop you right there for a
Yes.
minute? Because this is, how many acres?
344 plus.
So the requirement is he's going to have to put diamond wire fence, 6-foot diamond wire fence all the way around the boundary areas of this property, correct?
At the letter of the ordinance, that is correct.
Just making sure I'm clear.
It could be, it has been discussed amongst staff that accommodations in theory could be made, but it just, what the nature of those look like and a full waiver of that is unknown. It's up for board review. It would have to go before the planning commission, and they'd have to make a pretty good argument saying we should reduce it or there should not be it. And that's obviously not something that you guys can talk about, but it is something that if it made it to that point, they would talk about it, most likely. Because that is a lot of land to be
So
fenced.
any approval that we would make would require that.
It would require they
Here,
could not
could not.
operate before getting a development plan.
Yeah.
And in doing that development plan, they could not operate without approval from health department, fire department, us, roads, like everybody would, there's a whole process, utility providers, that whole kit and caboodle, we'll call it. Anywho, the impacts of this are anticipated to be less. It's just the argument of whether or not it is less enough to fit. The size of the property and given proper location and construction could be well suited for the area. It could be a nice amenity for people, but you do have to consider the condition of the infrastructure in the area. These are my 4 findings. While staff does recommend approval of it, it's kind of in the mindset of, first of all, consensus. Second of all, that there could be enough conditions applied that it could fit better with the community than the initial size and extent. If things kind of came up, we would obviously kind of address them from there. There are 11 conditions of approval. I know we previously, and I'm going to grab them. We previously talked about 14, and some of them had been pulled just off of testimony from that. We can also consider reapplying any of these conditions that, or upon neighbor or board discretion, if they felt so inclined. Specifically, if you're looking at your previous packet, talks about recreational use amenities within 50 feet of property lines. That was pulled because of the 50-foot setback, and it felt redundant after conversation. Emergency access paths was specifically related to hiking trails. And then we did talk about recreational vehicles or similar amenities. That could be something that could be added if that was requested. That was kind of an imposing of what use as opposed to hearing the neighbor talk or the owner talk about the use. Anyway, we have 11 conditions. First four are typical four. Fifth talks about the count. 6 talks about the reg. 7 talks about the hours of operation. 8th talks about fireworks. 9th talks about county fire approval. 10th talks about the development plan. And 11 talks about having public water and electricity and receive their approval as part of the development plan phase. If you're looking at the development plan requirement, if you're doing a major development site change, use change, it fits within the subdivision and development regulations and the zoning ordinance that a development plan is filed. So that's called into question. It is in that one. That one is pretty big and fits a lot of these conditions. We just sometimes call them out.
So and I remember this application well, but the reason we denied the application to begin with was not the number of cabins, but rather the substandard road, the emergency services, the fire, so forth, correct?
Yes, as is stated in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, is the applicant here?
I have one question.
Hang on. Are you the applicant?
No, I'm not.
Okay, hang on. We're going to take the applicant first. Let me go in method here.
Wait just a minute. This question is from what she said, okay? There were 14 before, knocked down to 11. Why was 7, 9, and 10 taken out?
Well, I'm going to address you by telling you one more time. I'm going to go to the applicant first because we have to go in procession, and then I'll answer your question, okay?
That sounds like a reasonable thing to do.
I thought it would be. Thanks. Appreciate that. Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Hello, my name's William Withers. I think we all met a month ago. So after last month's meeting, we still feel inclined to take this project on. We think it'll be good for Scott County. So in doing so, we went back to planning and zoning. We met with staff there and said, hey, after what we learned from the concerns, the issues that we had over the last application, what can we do to make you guys feel more comfortable and more on board with what we want to do? Their recommendation was to limit to 5. They said we would support 5 cabins on the property. We think that would work. That would severely decrease pressure on utilities, pressure on the road, all that stuff. And, we said, you know what, we'll take it. We would take that recommendation and we'll go with that. So that's why we're standing here today. And one of the things the reason we went with 5, we looked at possible uses for the property. It's 344 acres. It could easily be subdivided into, who knows, 5, 10 properties. I'm not sure where it could go. With that being said, there would be at least probably 5 new homes built on that property that would all tie into that same water line. It would all tie into the same electric system. So somehow or another, there's a good chance there's going to be at least 5 properties built on that land at some point, or it could be. We don't know. So that's why they said, we think 5 would work. Let's see here. The fence, we understand the ordinance with the fence. Right now it says we have to build a fence around 344 acres. all I can say on the fence is, I guess that's not to be addressed tonight. That would be addressed in the final development plan, and we will cross that bridge when we get there. That's all we can say. I don't think it's to be addressed tonight. Am I right about that?
Well, if we were to grant approval of this application, it would be a requirement.
Okay. As of right now, yes, we would build a fence around 344 acres. And that, like I said, that would be all finalized in the final development plan. We would prohibit any fireworks. The only thing in the application, in the conditions of approval that I would ask, I actually come to Elise with this question the other day. We would ask that the board grant us permission to have one fire pit per cabin, which would be maintained just like the one described in here, with a perimeter around it to limit any chance of a fire spreading. We would ask that the board grant that. We think with the tremendous decrease in the number of cabins, we're still only talking about 5 small campfires as opposed to 30. We're limited down to 5 cabins. That's a reduction of 25 cabins, and you know that's going to decrease the amount of traffic tremendously. In closing, before I turn it over to some folks that probably are not going to like what I'm doing, I would say it says right here that approval of the conditional use permit would likely not impact public health, safety, or welfare surrounding area, and would not alter the character of the general vicinity. The property is 444 acres. The cabins are going to be mostly, almost fully hid from anybody on that road. They're not going to bother anybody. We're going to have restrictions in place to make sure people are not noisy after 10 p.m., just like they recommended here. We're going to have provisions in place that prohibit people from wandering throughout the property. We're going to take that very seriously. So, you have any questions, or you want to come back to that?
We'll come back.
Okay. I would like to, one more thing. In last month's meeting, there was an issue brought up about phone usage. I did not last month get a chance to readdress any of that, so I'd like to address that real quick. There's an AT&T phone tower on my property, on the property. I got 5 bars. It does matter. I got 5 bars when I'm standing in the middle of the forest out there. 5 bars and 5G. My phone works great. Thank you.
Hang on.
Sorry.
Do me a favor.
Yep.
No comments out loud.
Sorry.
Okay? I did tell you that I would address you next.
Yes.
So I'm going to honor that. Will you step forward?
I'm waiting for the answer.
I'm waiting on you to step forward.
But this is not my 2 minutes.
State your name and address, please.
My name is James Sammons, and this is not my 2 minutes. 270 Bailey
Well, it
Road.
actually is if I tell you it's your 2 minutes.
Well, then we disagree. But go ahead. Give me your...
I'm not the one with the question. Ask your question again.
The question was, and I will reiterate it, why was items 7, 9, and 10 removed?
I don't remember what they were, at least what it were.
I ran through them. That was like a 10-second call, so
All right.
that's up to you if you want to, you guys know that one. You didn't bring your packet with you? How dare you?
Have you seen my packet?
Item 7 states that the applicant shall not have any recreational use amenities within 50 feet of all property lines. In part, that was related to hiking trails not having those within 50 feet of property lines, but any built structure has to adhere to the zoning regulations on setback, which is 50 feet. So if they were going to have another amenity, which would push stuff closer, and it's not a built thing, we could discuss something along those lines. At this time, it wasn't expressed, at least to me, through Matt, that there was going to be any type of amenity other than the cabins and maybe like the driveway.
Okay.
So that one is why that one was pulled. Item 9 was also just a lot of imposing uses on them. without like proper confirmation on whether or not it was going to be something on the property. So that was pulled just because that was not something portrayed to Matt and then to me, that was something that was expected on the property. If it is an amenity that they're interested in having, it would be reasonable to reconsider re-adding that one if that was kind of getting into the weeds for that site. That talks just again about the applicant shall not operate a motorized recreational vehicle track or similar amenity on the property. And then item 10 is explicitly related to hiking trails, which states that the applicant shall install emergency access paths to all hiking trails on the property. The applicant shall demonstrate that the access paths have appropriate vertical and horizontal clearance, all season and all weather use, material, grade, and any other metric deemed necessary. Since they removed explicit hiking trails from that site, this has been pulled from it. If they, again, we're going to start maybe talking about having some type of walking trail or whatever loop they wanted to, first of all, that's not requested, so they would need to reapply. Second of all, you could consider adding that. If we wanted to add a condition to hiking trails explicitly, we could, but because they haven't asked for it, it wouldn't be something that would be within the abilities of their use permit.
Thank you.
Not really.
Same thing with the RV site, or
Right.
same thing with the RVs, same thing with anything that's recreational vehicle operation. Since it's not requested, it can't be something that you can grant. You can only grant things based off of definitive requested items.
Right, which was not in this application. Got
It
it.
was not in this.
So can you see my concern?
I see your concern with it being removed, but it's not addressed in this application. Okay, so
Not relevant.
she answered your question. I won't count that against your 2 minutes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ma'am?
Very generous. I'm a generous guy.
Yeah.
So allow
I'm
me
trying to work with you.
I didn't
All right.
think there's a reason to go.
I'm gonna try and limit myself so that you don't have to, so I'm gonna try and cut all this up. I'm Carrie Gaby, I'm at 415 Bailey Road. The couple things I wanted to address were the health and safety, the idea that 5 cabins is similar to 5 properties, and the idea that the decrease in number of units decreases a lessened risk. Just because there's less cabins doesn't mean there's less people. We don't know if we're swapping 30 cabins of 5 people for 5 cabins of 30 people. We don't know if there's going to be further applications for day use. So to me, this application may not even be less people than it was. I moved to Bailey Road 6 years ago. My first fire there was a disaster. I accidentally used gasoline instead of diesel fuel. I blew a big fireball at my leg, and the next morning, my fire had slow burned 50 feet close to my house. It was a disaster. Now, 6 years later, I'm a lot more careful. I watch the weather, I know when to burn, I know how to start a fire. I had a bunch of math, I'm not gonna have time to read. You're looking at 365 times 5 first fires out there. You're looking at people that have seen these blind roads for the first time. They don't know these curves, they don't watch for deer. Short-term renters are not homeowners. This is a large wooded property. Even in its occupied state in our houses, we can't keep people off our property. We can't keep them off ATVs, shooting on our property. I had a guy shoot up in my driveway when I first moved there because it was unoccupied before I lived there. That's an owner-occupied property. These are unoccupied. It doesn't matter what rules he makes. It doesn't matter what rules we make. We can't keep those kind of people off our properties. We certainly can't keep them off a property where no one's there. This property, this proposal is designed for a private property owner to make money at the expense and welfare of the renters, the neighbors, and our first responders, because his rules will be enforced by first responders. He's going to pinky promise that he's going to keep everybody safe and we're going to keep the volumes low, and we put no restrictions on it. You know, is this going to turn into a wildcat place where you sign a waiver and you drink and day drive? You know, that's not a cabin, that's a day use, right? 5 cabins on $1 million property with a fence can't support that. It can't. So there will be more applications. There will be more ideas for what's going to go on, because you can't buy $1 million property and get 5 little dinky rental cabins. So the idea that 5 cabins is not 5 homes. That's my 2 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Barbara Boron-Quianchu. I'm at 728 Bailey Road. I want to address...
Excuse me, I was writing. Please tell me that again.
Sure. Barbara Quianchu, 728 Bailey Road, and I'm not on the sign-up sheet.
Okay. Not just your name has got to be. Could you speak up, please?
Koyuncu.
And you're not on the list, were you sworn in?
I was sworn in when you asked.
I thought you were, okay. Thank you.
But I will tell the truth, sir. I want to talk about the difference between a homeowner and a Airbnb cabin rental. A homeowner knows the dangers of the roads, which have already been stated in more times than you want to hear. But they know the dangers, they know how to maneuver the roads, they've been driving those roads for years. You're going to have people that come in that are Airbnb folks from Ohio and other states and different communities that are going to be petrified when they go through 12 bends in 1 mile with drop-offs on both sides. God forbid if there is any type of fire or truck, vehicle coming, a large vehicle, they will be in the middle of the road and run somebody else off unintentionally. But that's just the nature of it. Those roads are very, very windy and dangerous with a lot of blind spots. I want to say that the fire risk. These homeowners are a community. The fire risk, homeowners know when to refrain. They will not have fires if there's a wind. We had 70-mile-per-hour winds, and most of you know about that in our community and in the community at large. But we've had many conditions where it's a danger. It's very dry there. There are cedars all the way up to my windows, and there are dead ash trees throughout. If you look at the topography, this is all woods, but if you look at our properties beyond that and on Morris and Bailey, it's extremely forested. Thank you. And as you can see, these are a bunch of ridges. At this point, I do want to digress a little bit and say if there's ATVs on that, it's extremely dangerous, and you're not going to be able to pull anybody out of there, okay? So, digress for a minute, I want to go back. A homeowner watches for unknown people. They watch for criminal elements. They are in our neighborhood, and they warn others. In this case, we're going to have so many people that we don't know, however many people per cabin. 5 cabins, 365 days, that's 1,825 people times 4, which is around 7,000 if you consider 4 people per cabin. How do we know who's in our community? Right now, I can be on the side of my road for an hour talking to a neighbor, and I've done it twice in 2 weeks, and not one car has come by. But if one does, I know that it's one of these people, for sure, or an Amazon truck. But when we have all these strangers coming in, we have no idea who they are. We have no idea if there's a criminal element. We don't even know if they're part of the Airbnb. There is no supervision at that Airbnb. I'd like to talk about the families. These are families.
That's the time limit, so we're going to call you at time. We appreciate it, but I've got probably 40 other people that want to speak as well, so thank you for that. Hang on. Bear in mind, we also don't want to be repetitive with this, so please bear that in mind, or we're going to have 40 of the same topic coming. I'm going to go this way, sir, with her first, if you will.
My name is Sheila Forbes. I live at 1001 Morris Road, directly behind this property. I've lived there for 20-plus years. Forbes. I want to speak to the fact that we have seen improvements, seen development, march very steadily towards this rural area. When I bought my property 20-some years ago, I specifically chose a property that was out in the country because I wanted the peace and the privacy that comes with living in a rural situation. We now have industrial parks, schools, breweries, marching quickly towards this area. It's great that Scott County is growing. We understand that that's really inevitable. But what we ask as citizens, and what I want to speak to, is the need to do it the right way, to make sure that the area remains safe. If you're talking about adding any improvements on this underdeveloped land, then it needs to be done the right way. And I'm talking about major things, not just putting 5 cabins on underdeveloped property. There needs to be road and intersection improvements to accommodate increased traffic, whether it's 5 cabins or 5 subdivisions. There has been horrific accidents at that section between Muddy Ford and Fennel because there's such a high volume of traffic already turning. These are quite honestly some of the worst roads in this part of Scott County, and they're already stretched to the max. And frequently accidents and ditch runs happen out there because they're already stretched to the max with the traffic that they have. We need to improve and expand fire safety. I think the closest fire hydrant to this property is over 1.5 miles away. We cannot keep adding, expanding, building, putting homes without adding more fire safety. We've already addressed the fact that it's hard enough to get a fire truck out there. At this point, it doesn't matter if there's not a close enough water source. We have talked about the need to improve the water system. At some point, the county is going to have to do that. We honestly do not know what effect this development may have. Maybe none, but we do not know that. We cannot answer that question. Flood mitigation is very important. These people that could possibly be coming in from out of state will not know where the flood areas are. We live there. We understand the responsibility and the danger that comes with flooding. People who are not from there will try to drive through it. So I hope that the Scott County Water Rescue Team is receiving adequate funding for their training.
Ma'am, I hate to tell you, but that's the time right there. You got close. Thank you. I hate doing that. Please understand, I hate calling people at time. This is the worst thing. We do. It is, and we understand that. But we have so many that have called in or that want to speak. We have to share the wealth. Okay, so who else? Sir?
I'm Frank Wiseman, 234 Fennel Road. I've been sitting so long I can hardly walk, but I think the slippery slope principle applies here. Once this is approved, there's great incentive for the applicant to come back and ask for more and more and more, and a little incentive for the board to turn them down. Decision to approve this was not based on a change in principle. There's still got to be more traffic, all the issues that have been brought up. It was only based on quantity. And on that basis, I ask that the board stop this development right now.
I think he only used 30 seconds. That was perfect. Fantastic.
I'd like to have those.
I know. They do not bleed over. All right. Who else would like to speak? Yes, ma'am?
She's going to finish her paper.
Huh?
She's going to finish her paper.
You're going to finish her paper,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Come on.
Yeah, that's right. We
My
understand.
name is Heather Atkins, and I live 1093 Morris Road. Again, I am finishing hers, but we are neighbors, and these are all neighbors.
Well played.
We do what we can do to protect each other. A lot of things would be, so if the people are not following the rules, who's going to be there to make sure that they are? Is there someone going to be maintaining the property all the time? Is it going to be you check in on Monday and you don't see anybody until Friday when you check out? So there's nobody really watching to make sure you're following the rules? And I know there's been people who tell us that they've lived there for 20 years and you call the cops because you have a disturbance. And because of the short staff of the police and stuff, there is times they never show up. We understand that. That could be a real concern. Also, hunting. We all know it's inevitable. That's probably what's going to happen, or a guesstimation. I have children that play on the property. Are there going to be bullets? Are there going to be people trespassing? That could be dangerous to my children who play, or my cattle. That puts food on my table. That's all I have to say.
Sir?
Mine's going to be very brief. My name is Robert Phillips. I live at 893 Morris Road. We've had this farm since 1976. Our farm backs up to this property. That property was used for a while for, there was a deer hunting club, had leased it. I can't tell you the number of times we ran off deer hunters on four-wheelers. You wake up on Saturday morning, it's like a war zone back there. But my biggest concern, honestly, and when he came up earlier, he talked about the 5 cabins versus if you had 5 homeowners build a home. Well, I own a home, and I put I built another home on Morris Road. And I was required by law to have a minimum of 5 acres for that one residence. And I had to put in a septic system to match that residence. It's required by law. Now, what kind of septic system are we talking about for these cabins? Are we talking the same as I have to do as a homeowner? You know, a septic system for that individual cabin? We talking about outhouses? I mean, porta potty, you know, that hasn't been addressed, and I'm just curious is what it is. And if you can build a cabin and put, say, just a porta potty next to it, does that mean like on my land? I mean, I'm a single dad of 4 kids, and I'm kicking them out as quick as I can. But if they want to come back, can I put a cabin and a outhouse and say, you know, stay there for a week and then leave, and you can always come? I mean, you know, I'm curious as how that works, because myself, and I'm sure everybody here that are homeowners that built, they had to put in a septic system. They were required by law. And again, I don't want to, again, the deer hunting and that kind of stuff, the guns, that kind of stuff scares me. I've watched Morris Road burn. I mean, like I said, I've lived there since '76. I've seen gentlemen came out to a farm out there to do scrap metal. They brought in a torch, cut this car, trying to cut a car up. They caught the entire valley on fire. Took 8 fire trucks from Scott County to come out there and put this fire out. And God bless Scott County. You know, we've been growing. I can remember when it was little, and we're growing, and the fire department does the best they can. The sheriff's department, the police department, you know, everybody's doing the best they can. But something like this, I mean, 5 cabins from 30, in my mind, there's a question in my mind is how all of a sudden did it drop to that small amount, and what's the future hold for that property and more stuff. Thank you for your time.
Elise, would you address the septic issue, please?
As best as I can, as someone who does not do the septic thing. I mean, the 5-acre minimum dwelling credit, or one dwelling unit per 5-acre requirement is based off of health code regulations, so it's good. It's great that he followed the rules. I'm very happy for that one. It's always great to hear that everything's at least hopefully going PG. Regarding septic, I mean, I don't know if they've gone out and gotten anything reviewed at this time, but if it was approved and as condition, I believe 10 states, I'm just guessing, there's 1 out of an 11 chance.
You're right.
10.
You got it.
Nice. They would be required to meet it. I don't know what type of system it would be. I don't know if they could do a shared system similar to how like Mallard Point or what's the other one that has a shared system? Victoria Estates.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they do something like that, or otherwise that's something that I can't speak to, but yeah.
But there is oversight, and it will be applied.
It
I was
would
gonna say,
apply.
to answer your question, we don't govern that. That's the health department. So what has to happen is they would have to come out if we grant approval in order to work through that. Okay, so that would be on them. So we're not trying to skirt around your issue. We just can't say yay or nay because that's not us, and I don't want to be in trouble with the health department at all. Yes, ma'am?
Magda Dawson. I'm in 4809 Powderhorn Drive in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I own property on Morris that is directly south of this property. On the proposal, it was listed that the cabins would be 160 to 224 square feet. In a recent USA Today survey, the average hotel room is 325 square feet. So these cabins are going to be smaller than your average size hotel room. A typical, what is considered 1-star hotel room, which is for transient guests typically used, I assume that's a Holiday Inn, Quality Inn, Comfort Inn. Those hotel rooms are 150 to 300 square feet. So my question is, how is a cabin that is smaller than your typical hotel room going to support a family? It's listed that it'll be a family activity. If you go to the any tiny home websites, a 224 square foot tiny home is a 1-bedroom with a optional loft, a sink, and a 2-burner stove. So most of the cabins would only be allowed to have 2 or 3 people, and I think that would be difficult if you had 2 children to be in 224 square feet.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? Sorry, I'll catch you in a minute.
James Perrin, 180 Finn Pike. Just a question on that. On the first proposal, I saw where it had a size on the size of the cabins. I didn't see anything on the second proposal as far as the size of the cabins. Did you get that off of the second proposal, or was that from the
Still
first?
listed, that was still listed as in the second proposal, same size, yes.
You got that on the second?
That was listed with the material that was provided, yes.
On the second, okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, excuse me, Teresa Wiley, 272 Bailey Road. And I was sworn in just a few minutes, a couple of hours ago, whatever. This is sort of, some of these people mentioned this before, but these are different points. First of all, the lack of trails doesn't really mean anything, because if you have hunting on the property, hunters don't follow trails. They go all over, and they go in the woods, they set up tree stands. I actually had somebody on that property shoot across my land when I was walking my dogs, and a bird fell out right in front of me. So that's how close I came to being shot from that land. One problem with strangers hunting averse to people who come every year to your property and hunt. You know them, they know you, they know where your property line is, they know where the houses are. Whereas if you have people coming in every weekend and they're hunting, they don't know any of this. Who's going to show them where the property line is? Is he going to come out there every time somebody comes in and wants to hunt and say, okay, here's the property line, somebody lives here, somebody lives there? So there's nothing for that. And then just a point of information. Yes, you can get AT&T out there, but that tower does not handle, I don't think it handles T-Mobile, because when we got our new phones, we had accidentally, they sent us a T-Mobile, what do you call those things in the phone? Yeah, and it didn't work, so we had to get an AT&T one. So everybody's phone will not work just because there's an AT&T tower there.
All right, anyone else? Oh, hang on, we got one in front of you. We still have a couple. You're good.
We'll get you.
My name is Ruth Wiley. I'm a resident at 272 Bailey Road. And I wanted to comment specifically and very strongly against the applicant's request for additional fire pits. One of our biggest concerns, I think, as a community is the fire risk and all of the hazards that go along with that. And extra fire pits just means more risk. I've been at something kind of similar to what's being proposed, but it was at a beautiful state park that, served the public good, not just somebody's private profit. And at that location, they had small cabins with one central pit. And that was at a park that had plenty of employees who could monitor, keep track of things. So certainly if this is approved, which we would all prefer it wasn't, but if it is approved, we definitely want to keep the planner's very well-considered suggestions in place. And I just wanted to express my general concern that the applicant's request for this and his questions about the fencing concern us about how well these restrictions will be applied and, what will happen if this is built. What are we going to do if something goes wrong?
Okay, thank you. I've got one more in front of you. Hang on, go ahead.
Excuse my voice, don't have much. My name is Jody Perrin. I live at 180 Fennel. And I wanted to ask, how many times have you driven that road? Several times? It's a treacherous, okay, it is a treacherous road. We used to, when we go out for a drive, we used to choose to go out there just because of the beauty of it, but it's really a treacherous road. Also, you had mentioned the Bourbon Trail and tourists. I can't imagine what would happen if somebody spent the evening at the brewery and came on down Fennel Pike and up to that area? That would be a treacherous drive. The Bourbon Trail, I think that's what you call it. We have the brewery right down there, and you head up that road. That's a terrible, terrible thought. Not good. Also, I can't understand personally why anybody would spend this much money to rent out 5 cabins on a hill. They would never pay that back unless there's something else in the future that, some ideas of doing something else in the future with this land. We're on the end on Fennel and 62. We have a different situation there because we see the traffic that comes in and how many sirens and emergency vehicles come to 62, turn on Fennel, go past our house and head up on that way, and they go and go and go and go until we can no longer hear them. It is not a good idea, the combination of all these things. That's not a good place for what we're talking about today. Not at all a good place. Not safe, not reasonable, not practical. It's just not, too much would have to be done to make it even consider it being safe.
Right.
And what would happen in the off-season? Who's going to take care of the property? And also, did I say this? We don't have, our cell phones don't work either on down Fennel and up that road too.
All right,
Thank you so much.
Did you say you were not sworn in?
No, I'm sorry. We were a few minutes late, so I apologize for that.
It's Charlie's area.
I sure do, sir.
And your name, please?
Stefan, and last name Koyuncu as hers. Koyuncu,
Oh,
K-O-Y-U-N-C.
when I thought we
Yes,
told the
yes,
truth.
so that's why I just want. Okay, I am very familiar with this Airbnb concept. When I go to Europe, I stay at Airbnbs often. As far as I know, Airbnbs in rural areas attract 2 types of people. Sure, young parents who are going to bring their children and then enjoy their weekends. But my concern is a bunch of college-aged kids coming from surrounding states or maybe UK or Georgetown or whatever, and then driving to distillery, the future distillery, bars, restaurants, and driving back to Airbnbs drunk. The chance of getting hit with a drunk driver is going to be much higher. Incredibly curvy roads, very dangerous, and when my wife and I go out, she usually drives. The last time we did, she had 3 margaritas. I did not let her drive. I said, give me the keys, I will drive. She said, no problem. And I'm driving 20 miles per hour at the top of the hill. Why? Because I had so many near misses. Sooner or later, somebody's gonna get hit over there. And unfortunately, with the strangers coming and staying at these Airbnbs, I worry that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I told you I would bring you back up. There you go.
I appreciate it, I really do. James Sammons, 270 Bailey Road, Charlie. I cannot reiterate what everybody said, and you can understand how we feel, okay? The only thing is, what a burden it's going to bring on our added taxes. Not the taxes we pay, but what we do pay in. The burden's going to be on the fire department, on the police department, county, on other services that will eventually have to be rendered. Now, that's my big concern right there. Everything that we have said in the past is true, and we hope that you follow what you need to do. Thank you.
Sure.
Mike Jackson, 100 Bailey Road. I'd like to address the environmental part of this. When they start excavating and removing trees, land, what's that going to do to the rain runoff? I live right at the end of Fennel and Bailey. I get the brunt of most rain that comes from the east side of that hill. I usually have anywhere 6 inches to a foot of water at any given time during a heavy rain. Also, the impact of litter that's going to be coming. You know, people just, they don't really care. It's not their neighborhood. They throw bags out, whatever. So that's some of my concerns is environmental. Has there been an environmental study done for 5 cabins, for 20, for 30, because like I said, we all know it's not going to stop at 5. So what is the environmental impact from 5 to 30 cabins on the area? And as far as the area, it not hurting the area, it does hurt the well-being of that area. You know, we all like to sit out on our decks. Like I say, I'm at the corner of Fennel and Bailey. You have that added extra traffic. What happens when you go to a turn? What's the first thing you do? You hit the gas pedal. I hear it all day, all night. Increased traffic's just going to make it worse. Not to mention the construction vehicles that are overloaded when they travel that road. So that's my point.
Appreciate it. Anyone else? Sir?
My name's Sonny Hanna. I live on 737 Bailey Road. And those roads out there were designed by ridge tops and wagons. And that's how Scott County built that road on Bailey Road. It's very curvy. And I'm usually a gardener out there in the front yard, and I see the people going by. And there's been many wrecks around there that at nighttime that the police never come out. The car's gone, but next morning then you'd see the pile of glass and debris on the side of my yard. And and I got a daughter that's moving over on Morris Road. They bought 10 acres over there. They got 4 teenagers. They're getting their driver's license and stuff like that. And the roads are very dangerous. You got to learn. Everybody learns after you've been out there for a while that what to do and what not to do, even in your mind and in your thinking and stuff like that. And I'm just very concerned that there might be some type of fatality out there because of the more traffic, because he's not stopping with just the little cabins. There's going to be more. It could be weddings. We don't know what could be out there. And so it's just going to create more tragic to that community and the people that live around there and enjoy their family. And we don't want to see the people that's coming in get hurt, you know, because they don't know the roads. I lived out there for 33 years. And, you know, I see dump trucks going by. And I usually, since I'm gardening, I usually have to holler because they're so loud and they're flying down the road. Everybody's wanting to get home on time. The bus drivers ran me off the road before we had this last meeting. One bus driver, and she almost ran me off the road again this month. And last month. And so I know those roads. I've lived out there in Scott County probably for 40 some years, out over Hinton Davis Road on the backside, and the roads just don't match what the traffic needs. I mean, they're so curvy, there's so many blind spots that they need to be changed to have more people out there because they are getting dangerous, very dangerous.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Ma'am? That's that guy. Charlie?
Surely you're going to put an end to this at some point. Do you swear or affirm to say that you're about to make the truth, best information you believe?
Yes, I do. My name is Nina Susan Smith, and I live at 485 Bailey Road.
First name again?
Nina, N-I-N-A. And a couple things that no one has mentioned, and I know that in the back of their minds they've just forgotten. There is a cemetery on this property, and it's a very, very old cemetery. Most of the headstones probably look like rocks to you, but Sonny that just spoke feels that one of those graves belongs to his great-great-grandmother. So anyway, to me, that's an important factor to consider on this property. The other thing is danger, and I know everybody keeps thinking that it's not dangerous, you know, this 5 cabins, whatever. There is at least one open well on that property. So if this gets approved, then so be it. But there are things on that property that are important to other people, and the well thing needs to definitely be a concern. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Charlie, to your credit, yes. I think everybody has said something. I do want to give the applicant any time to respond if you would like. I would like to give you a little time. If not, that's up to you. It's completely your.
I'll take this
Sure. Go ahead. By all means.
Now, one thing has been addressed a lot, but from James Wiley. One thing I want to start off has been addressed a lot, but not from this aspect, winter, and that's the roads. From this property, in any direction you go, there's a very, very bad hill to come off of that hill. All three routes you could take. They turn, there's drop-offs, and they're very steep. And they get iced over in the wintertime, very bad. If there's anybody renting out there in the wintertime that don't know the roads, they could be out in the field, turned upside down. That's all I'm going to say about the roads, because the rest of it's been covered. The other thing is the cell phone tower. Could that not be as much of a safety hazard in more than one aspect? There's the safety hazard of if there's children that get through the fence to the cell phone tower, as well as the radio tower. There's high voltage over there. They could climb the tower, fall from the tower. You know, fences don't stop anybody that wants to go over them or go under them. People do it all the time. And being that close without supervision of those cell phone towers, in town, you have a lot of eyes watching those cell phone towers. You have a lot of law enforcement. You have a lot of just public people out there watching those towers. They could monitor that, make sure kids don't get to it. They still get to them. Out there, there's not that many people watching them. With added strangers coming in all the time. And it doesn't have to be kids. It could be just drunks. Could be somebody high on something. We already have that danger to some extent, but it's going to be worse when you have multiple people from who knows where coming in there. There's also the aspect of maybe somebody gets drunk and decides they want to have some target practice with the cell phone towers. Right now, we don't have very good landlines because they don't keep them up anymore. They're not made to. And there's a lot of people here, even with AT&T, can't get the cell phone service because of the topography. They're down in a holler. It changes with seasons. It changes with the rain, the weather, the temperature of the air. The signal travels different in cold air versus hot air. And there's a lot to be considered with the cell phone towers, I believe. Safety as well. We may need the cell phone tower and it'd be out because somebody shot at it. I mean, I don't know if they're using it for hunting, but what are they using it for? It doesn't seem like they're being very upfront with it, to me. Most of us would like to know what the long-range plan is. Because there's no way they can make $1 million off of 5 cabins unless there's some monstrosities that have multiple people in it. I think that's all I need to say.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
I'll address a few of the concerns that everybody brought up. Of course, I'm not going to be able to satisfy everybody's concern, but I'll address a few of them. Hunting. We didn't ask for anything in this conditional use for hunting. I mean, the property right now as is could have 10 hunters on it shooting daylight till dark. I mean, it doesn't have to have a conditional use to go hunting. If I buy the property, I can go hunting. I can have my friends come out and go hunting. You know, I can let my brother-in-law come over and hunt. I mean, the hunting's just not really relevant, I don't think. We're not going to have guest hunting. That's not part of the plan, but like I said, it's not relevant, I don't think. ATVs, it was brought up several different times, several different folks, ATVs. That's not in the plan. We X that out because there was concern about that. Hiking trails, people wandering over the property. Where these cabins are located on the property, they would have to walk half mile or more in any direction to get to another person's property. We'll put provisions in place to try to limit that as much as possible. Can I say that nobody would ever walk anywhere? I can't say that, just like they can't say that somebody will. But we will do everything in our power to limit that and to make sure our establishment is well maintained, well taken care of, and everybody in this room is respected. As far as the money goes, I've heard several different times, you can't make $1 million off 5 cabins. It's my $1 million, I can do what I want with it. If I want to buy 344 acres on Bailey Road, then my wife and I enjoy being outdoors. We want to put 5 cabins on it, but we would like to enjoy that property as well. We would like to get outdoors and enjoy the property. We'd like our kids to do the same. So, you know, I don't think that part is relevant either. There's a well on the property. I've not walked every square inch of the property. We will eventually, and especially around where our cabins would be. If there's a safety issue found, like a well, we'll address that concern. There's no doubt about that. There's grave sites on the property. Sir, if there is a grave site on that property, you have my word. I have much respect for anything of that sort. That would be dealt with much respect. That's just the type of person I am. Everybody in this room thinks I'm an animal for wanting to do this. I'm not. I'm a respectful guy. I respect everybody in this room. So, you know, we would definitely protect that. The cell phone tower has a 6-foot no-climb fence around it, just like the one that I'm being asked to put around 344 acres. If a 6-foot no-climb fence doesn't stop somebody from climbing that fence, it's not going to. Really, if a 4-foot fence, if somebody wants to get over that fence, they're going to get over it. You know, I don't think that's, anybody could go out there and climb that cell phone tower, I guess. But, I mean, that's just somewhat of just something to throw up in the air here. Drunk driving, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope nobody drinks and drives. Can we say that nobody will? When they build that brewery out there, should we not build a brewery because somebody might go there and drink and drive? No, we're going to build a brewery because drinking and driving is illegal, so they shouldn't do that to start with. They're Country Boy Brewing. Should they stop serving beer because people are going to go out there and drink and drive? No, they're going to serve beer. But as a responsible adult, you should know if you go out there and drink, you don't get behind the wheel. 5 cabins to 30, that's a tremendous reduction. And like I said, we applied for 5 cabins. At this point, everybody's saying, well, what's the future development? At this point, we asked planning and zoning what they would support, and they said they thought 5 cabins would be suitable for this property, and that's what we agreed to, and that's what we're asking you guys to approve tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I think we've heard from just about everybody at this point, so now it's left with us, which is always the fun part. Anybody want to trade? Trade positions?
I got a comment I'd like to make.
Go ahead, Tom.
I think it's a great idea. I think Scott County needs some camping areas, but I think the conditions don't agree with the idea for the area. So I make a motion to deny based upon the current conditions of the area, being road conditions, fire, response, water, and the neighbors' feelings.
Okay, Tommy makes a motion to deny. That will need a second.
I'll second it.
Sonia seconds the motion. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign? There are none. Motion carries.
Everything's been sent out. We're so good.
I know. And you know, that's how they feel too.
Hey, Charlie, we got one more.
I say that.
folks.
We have another application. If you could leave, please.
If you can all settle out.
Thank y'all. Whoever had to wait through all this, I feel sorry for them. Toddles.
Are you the one that had to wait through all this? We feel you. Yeah.
I was going back, Randy boys up the place where it was at, Randy Smith, and I was going to go back and find it. It's so grown up with weeds and everything else, I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Feel sorry for the guy. He has a great idea, but I just don't see the roads and the water just concerns me to the safety of anything.
I hope nobody's against me.
Yeah, I know.
You know, everyone's like gone out, like I'm thinking we're okay.
Look, she's the only one left in the room.
I really do feel careful that you got put.
All right, we're going to go ahead and move.
I'm very appreciative that I got put on this docket, though.
We're going to go ahead and move to the.
Threw a bunch of stuff
Hey, Elise, short version.
I was going to say, we're moving to the next
Short
application, which is
version.
S-2023-18. Ma'am, we are so sorry you have to sit here and consider this. Elise,
Oh my goodness.
we know pretty much what we're doing
Yep.
for this one. Run with it.
Wait.
All right.
Wait a minute. You have to recuse
Are you back
yourself?
in?
No, she's not.
I have to recuse myself again because we have a farm right
Go
across
take another
the street.
nap.
Go take another
All right.
look outside the conference room.
Anywho,
Get out of here and make it fast.
Hurry up, walk
run,
Goodbye,
run,
Janet.
Janet, run.
Run, Elise.
That's the plan.
Quick.
This is a use permit for secondary and tertiary residence at Switzer on 1158 Switzer Road. Access is from Switzer.
Schweitzer. Here you go.
Well, you know what?
It's been a
Y'all
long
say
day.
everything wrong. It's a 69.58 acre parcel. The size allows for it to meet our density requirements without any issue from ours. Angle, we just request nicely and actually with ordinances not to be in any floodplain, not to be within 50 feet of property lines, and be at least 100 feet from any existing structure on the property. It eliminates the need for a variance if at some point you want to subdivide. Overall, though, meets our standards. Everything's good and golden. If they want a new entrance, contact the state. These are my findings. It meets everything. It's not negatively expected to negatively impact things. It meets our density. These are our rules. First 4, typical 4. 5th is get an address. 6th is be 100 feet from existing stuff. 7th is don't be within the floodplain. Be 50 feet from the floodplain. That's all I got.
Any neighbor complaints on this one?
Absolutely not.
Ma'am, tell me you don't want to say anything against it, please.
I didn't swear her in, she can't.
All right.
Technically, she can't. Charlie's just not going to swear, so she doesn't
All
have
right,
to
in that
talk.
case, I'm going to make this really, really, really quick. I make the motion that we approve application -S2023-18, giving the staff recommendations.
Seconded.
Sonia seconds. Any questions, comments? All approved by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign. There are none. I make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
That
Don't-
saved me from a 9-page of minutes.
Don't you wish you were first? Just I hope nobody's against me.
I'm really bummed is